I would like to welcome you all to the second CSS seminar of the 2024-2025 academic year. Today, we have the great pleasure of hosting Dr. Fırat Duruşan from Politics Analytics. Before I give the floor to Dr. Duruşan, I will also briefly introduce him to you. Fırat Duruşan received his PhD degree from the Department of Political Science and Public Administration of Ankara University. His dissertation research involved a comparative political study of social policy in Argentina and Turkey in the post-2000 period, with a particular focus on cash transfer programs. He worked as a research assistant in Ankara University and Hittit University between 2010 and 2017. He was also visiting researcher in Facultad Latinoamericana de Ciencias Sociales in Buenos Aires, Argentina, between 2014 and 2015. He holds a BA and MA degree from the Department of Political Science and Public Administration of Middle East Technical University. His research interests include social policy, state theory, critical political economy, and his research focuses on the political economy of social policy in the global south and relations between welfare policies and wage labor. With that, I'll give the floor to Dr. Duruşan, and we can, I think, share the screen now.
Good afternoon. My screen is visible, right?
It is visible, Hocam.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to you all, and thanks in advance for participating in this event. And I would like also to thank Professor Angen for her kind introduction. In this session, I will try to give a brief summary of what a collaborative research team, an international research team, of which Politics Analytics is a part, have conducted the analysis that we've conducted together with the Ford Institute for Human Development in the Pittsburgh University, the United States, regarding online violence against women in politics. So to clear the ground before starting, this is not my personal research, although I was part of the research team from the very beginning. The analysis I'm going to report is the fruit of a collaborative effort of like two institutions and many brilliant researchers who work in both Koç University and Pittsburgh University. So our research was on, as I said, online violence against women in politics. So when we say online violence against women in politics, we mean any kind of action that takes place in the digital environment, in social media platforms and other web-based platforms where people interact with each other. Any kind of action that targets specifically women within the broader context of politics. And specifically, our research has focused on the periods before general elections and instances of online hate speech and offensive language that target women candidates in that run for public office in the elections. I'll come back to these specifics later on, but to give the general context beforehand, the electoral contexts that we focused on were two election contexts from Turkey, the latest 2023 general elections and 2024 local elections, and general elections in the United States that took place in later last year, in the last part of 2024. To go back to the definition of online violence against women in politics, these violent actions can take the form of cyber harassment, threatening, spreading disinformation, engaging in blackmail, including spreading intimate images and intimate information of women, and gender-based hate speech and offensive speech that target women. For this study, we have focused on specifically the offensive language and gender-based hate speech that target women. But online violence in general, including like every type of online violence, whether it aims to directly or not, it results in a situation where patriarchal gender roles and relations are produced and reproduced in the digital environment. But the fact that this takes place in a political context before the elections specifically, it also results in creating obstacles to women's participation in public life in decision-making processes. Especially online violence occurring on social media platforms before elections. They damage political campaigning and outreach efforts of women candidates. As everybody knows, social media platforms have become very important areas of political campaigning, political propaganda battles between different political candidates and political parties. So systematic online violence in these environments, they have results that raise the cost of political participation for women in being elected to public office. Therefore, they're taking parts in the democratic decision-making processes, and it creates obstacles for women in becoming political subjects, political decision makers, who are more likely than men to campaign for women's rights and gender equality in a broader context. So therefore, this damages all political efforts to eliminate discrimination and violence against women in many different aspects of life. So when it is more difficult to elect women into public office, we have less women in decision-making positions, and therefore it ends up less decisions, less legislation that targets gender discrimination and gender-based violence in different aspects of life. So it creates a vicious circle. It helps to create this vicious circle of general discrimination and violence against women in society. So if this is the general problem, and if it's very important in political life, what should be done about it? What could be done about it? As I already mentioned, it's particularly important before elections, and when it targets female candidates and any kind of political subject, really, in the end. Eliminating and dealing with that form of violence in that specific context requires a specific effort to deal with it. So preventative measures, empowerment strategies, and awareness-raising campaigns that focus specifically on online violence against women in politics should be developed, should be devised. So, for these policies, measures, and strategies to be effective and correct, we need to be able to understand how online violence against women occurs, how widespread it is, where it takes place, in which social media platform, but it is who are the major perpetrators of online violence against women, and many other aspects of it should be we should know about these aspects. So good information, knowledge based on good information, high quality information on these characteristics of online violence should be produced. So in order to guide the development of strategies that deal with this. So and also we need this information to determine the sort of accountability structure. Who is responsible? Who needs to do what? Who should be held accountable? Whether it's social media bosses, owners, to what extent they are responsible, and to what extent users are or perpetrators are responsible. That also should be determined in order to have a variety of approaches and strategies that deal with every actor in the process in specific ways. And all these requirements are based on good quality, high quality data, high quality information based on good quality data. Is the first step on any kind of knowledge production on these efforts. So for our team, who is experienced on online, but working both on social media platforms and also like within the context of the Politics project, and also since we've had an extensive experience in automatic detection and classification of various forms of language, various types of language over the years. We took up the task of detecting and classifying instances of offensive and hateful speech against women, on which the information that I outlined will be based. So in order to carry out this project, as I already said, we have entered an international partnership with the Ford Institute for Human Security from the Pittsburgh University, USA. And we have conducted a series of studies that aim to identify offensive language and hate speech as a component of general online violence against women in the United States and Turkey, and how this the differential distribution of these instances of online violence in different gender and for the US racial categories and political party categories. So we have developed computational social science methods, including artificial intelligence techniques based on deep learning and big data analysis, to automatically detect and classify instances of offensive speech and hate speech that took place in X, in the X platform, formerly known as Twitter platform. As I already said, we focused on 3 elections, the general and local elections in Turkey, and I mean, I guess you might say 2 elections in the US as well, particularly the elections for the Senate and the lower house in the US, and also presidential elections in the US. Within our broader effort to help dealing with online violence against women, we also engaged in an effort that will carry our knowledge and experience that we gathered in the academic field beyond, and to transfer it to actual policy. In order to do that, we have recently started another collaborative effort with the Pittsburgh University team, and with the support of the Northern Ireland government. We started developing concrete applications of these online detection and classification tools, and also that will detect instances of online violence against women in Northern Ireland specifically, across a multitude of platforms, not only Twitter but also Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, and some local forums that are in Northern Ireland. This is a highly experimental work that we hope to develop with success within the context of Northern Ireland, and which then can be disseminated into different country contexts, including Turkey and the United States, if at all possible. So we aim to go beyond research and apply the fruits of our research into the practical field of combating violence and discrimination against women. The project that we started will also take up automatic detection and classification of online violence, as we've already done, but it will further these efforts to create create a repository of online resources, education materials, research documents, awareness raising efforts that have been conducted all around the world. We will be developing a platform which compiles these different sources as a repository and makes it available to any users, particularly women who have survived forms of sexual violence, to classify them according to their needs and provide ease of access to globally such resources. So that's the second part of the project that we will be engaging. So in order to go back to the previous study that this presentation is based on, the online detection of online hate speech against women in politics, I'll just talk about the steps of our methodology. We first started with creating lists of candidates, of all candidates from the Turkish case and the United States cases. All candidates from every single political party that entered the elections were listed. That was the first step of the analysis. In the second step, we identified the candidates who had active accounts on the X platform, and found their X screen names. So this process involved an extensive of partly manual, partly automized web-based search to compile and list the Twitter handles of candidates who run in elections, all candidates, with high precision and accuracy. And we collected the posts that mention these candidate handles specifically from the 6 months that was before the elections. So there are slight differences in our methodology in terms of the Turkish context and the US context. In this presentation, I'm concentrating more on how we did things in the Turkish context. In the US context, we had relatively more like a limited data set to work with, but in the Turkish context, we had the help of the Politis Twitter users data set that we'd already compiled previous to the project, which contained almost all of the active users in Turkey. So we had like a much more breadth and depth of data in the Turkish context, whereas for the US context, we had more relatively less data. But again, it was still extensive. But for the Turkish case, we had like an exhaustive, not only extensive but exhaustive data source. So yeah, as I mentioned, we collected all posts in the X that mentioned political candidates in the 6 months before the election. In a parallel fashion, we trained the deep learning models that we used to detect and classify the instances of offensive language and hate speech. We had two categories of models. We had offensive language models, which consisted of a binary model which determines whether a given text contains offensive language or not. So it's just a 1-0 thing. And also, additional models, 1, 2, 3, yes, 4 additional offensive speech models that classify these the already detected instances of offensive language into subcategories of offensive language. So these subcategories are based on the intensity or type of offensive language. Those instances of offensive language which threaten or target meaning target someone and call upon violence, some form of violence, hedef gösterme in Turkish. Those kind of posts were if you like, most highest intensity violence, highest intensity offensive language. The second category was obscene, profane, sexual profanity containing insults. The third category was derogatory, demeaning forms of language, like targeting the character and personality of candidates. And finally, those types of offensive, those kinds of offensive language that simply mock, ridicule, belittle the candidate in question, that they're stupid, incompetent, etc. So this is like the most mildest form of offensive language. So as we had like a scale, starts from like simple mockery, simple ridiculing, going all the way to threatening with physical violence. We also had hate speech-based models. We, similar to the offensive language model, we had a hate speech binary model, which determined whether a post contained hate speech or not. We defined hate speech, meaning we base our definition of hate speech as the commonly accepted United Nations endorsed definition of hate speech, which is any form of offensive or violent language that targets a person's identity, a form of person's identity. So it can be gender identity, it can be religious identity, it can be ethnic identity or racial identity or sexual orientation identity. So if offensive language targets these aspects of one's identity, if the person is targeted, offended on the basis that they have these characteristics, we defined it as hate speech. So we had the definitional structure, the ontology, meant that every form of hate speech was a type of offensive speech in the end. So every post that we labeled somehow was first offensive language, then one of these categories, and then if they included some identity aspects in the offense, they were also labeled as hate speech. And hate speech also had subtypes based on what aspect of identity they were targeting. We had gender-based hate speech, ethnic identity / racial identity-based hate speech, and religious identity-based hate speech. We also had sexual orientation and disability-based hate speech, but since we were targeting a political candidate population, they were not very common. We didn't have many candidates with LGBTQ or identity so we didn't have enough data to use them. So our main hate speech subcategories were gender, ethnic identity, and religion. For the US context, that ethnic identity also included the racial aspect. It's important to stress that we use the same definitions for the two countries, for the US and the Turkish cases. We use these definitions and the same offensive speech and hate speech definition that I've already given you. Although, despite the fact that we had different processes of coding and preparing training data, and different sets of training data, one based on American tweets, one based on Turkish tweets. Their ontology was the same. The definitions and categories were exactly the same between two studies. So this is in that aspect, this is an important aspect of the study as well. So this is a comparative study at the same time of two very different country contexts which have very different political systems and levels of election. And we have the same ontology, same conceptual framework that handle these various contexts. So this also gave us the ground to conduct analyses, comparative analyses, and create a rich agenda of research, comparative research that can illuminate, shed light on many aspects of online hate speech, independent against women, particularly independent of the specific country context, and/or by taking into consideration specific country context aspects as well. So we're also, as a side note, we are in the process of creating publications, both comparative publications and publications that concentrate on each country with the Pittsburgh team, and I will be happy to share with those of you who are interested. But both the stuff that we've already done, already published. We haven't published an academic, like formal academic paper yet, but we had like 2 posters and a policy brief for a press that was published as a press release. I can provide you with those in the end. But we will have hopefully academic publications in the future as well. So after creating this ontology, we prepared samples of social media posts, Twitter posts, from each individual country from each electoral context, with normalized gender and party distributions. So in order to have a representative sample that doesn't discriminate against different identities or different political parties, we normalized these distributions and prepared samples from each electoral context to manually code, manually label, annotate, and create a gold standard corpus that would serve as training and test data for the deep learning models that we trained. For the annotation process, we were very lucky to work with graduate social science students from Koç University, namely, I would love to mention their names, Büşra and Kadir. We had double annotation of them, of the same posts, and according to the annotation manual that we prepared, and their disagreements were adjudicated by domain expertise to come up with a strictly applied ontology, strictly and consistently applied ontology, and high performing models. And then when we had the models and the data that we collected from individual countries, we just we trained the models and applied the models to make predictions on on the big data sets that we compiled, and we started analyzing the distribution of offensive language and hate speech content across different genders, parties. We crossed different aspects of our results and started conducting more in-depth analyses and try to understand how online violence targeting women candidates in electoral contexts in these two countries, how they occurred in the big picture. So in the rest of the presentation, I will give you some samples of some of the results that we reached. That are among the important samples, important conclusions that we reached, but by no means we have many more interesting comparisons, interesting conclusions, whose details you can find in the publications that I will share with you, both already those that we've already finished and the future ones. An interesting result that to be shared, we found the distribution of offensive and hateful language to differ among female and male candidates. So this is all of these analyses are based on the percentage, the ratio of hateful or offensive language that mention each category of candidates. So that means if you have like 100 posts that mention male candidates and 20 of them are two of them are hateful, you have like 2% of the posts that target male candidates are hateful. This is to say, this is not influenced by the number of male versus female candidates. So this is the percentages within each group. So when we look at the rate of hate speech before general elections, we find that 2% of posts that mentioned male candidates are hate speech, whereas between 1 to 1.5% of those target female candidates are hate speech. When we come to local elections, we see that the trend is reversed. 5% of all, like this is huge actually, 5% of all content that mentions a female candidate contains hate speech, whereas a little more than 1% of content that targets male candidates is hate speech. So there are a couple of possible factors which result in such a distribution. It is candidate prominency is an important issue. So the more prominent candidates you have in a category, the more depending on their notoriety, they will receive more hateful or offensive language. So if you have a male candidate, for instance, or a group of male candidates who attract a lot of hate in a general election, that might be among the reasons that this distribution is uneven. This might indicate that in the context of local elections, we have more female candidates who are attacked with hateful language, or there might be other factors within local elections that affect the occurrence of hateful language against female candidates as opposed to male candidates. As I said, we are in the process of making analyses with the data by creating certain various regression models, etc., to better understand the reasons or factors behind these uneven distributions. But I mean, in this moment of our research, we can say confidently that the gender makes a difference in terms of the occurrence of both hateful and offensive language. So these graphs are based on hate speech, general hate speech, by the way. It's not only gender-based. This includes religion-based hate speech, ethnicity-based hate speech, etc. And these are Turkish results. Again, almost all of the graphs I will present will be from the Turkish context. These are general elections and local elections from in Turkey. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. No matter. Yeah, I was going to say these kind of are these. Although rates are slightly different, this trend of male candidates receiving more hate speech before general elections is replicated in terms of offensive speech as well. So these, although slightly different distributions, the trends hold for offensive speech as well as hate speech. So the second important characteristic of hate speech and online violence that we have encountered in both countries, both country contexts, is the intersectionality of offensive language and hate speech against women. So this means that when we look at women candidates of minority, ethnic, religious, or racial categories, we consistently find that they receive more offensive or hateful language compared to their white or non-minority ethnic and racial groups. So the hate speech based on that will become clearer in the next slides. But when we look at gender-based hate speech specifically, we find that gender-based hate speech is not really the dominant form of hate speech. This is from Turkish data. This is Turkish data. But a very similar trend was in the American data as well. There, it was the race which was more prevalent, relatively more prevalent than gender. In the U.S. case, gender-based hate speech was higher than it was in Turkey, but their ethnicity, origin, or race also were more prevalent forms of hate speech that targeted female candidates. So this is hate speech that specifically targeting female candidates. So this implies if you have more ethnicity-based hate speech targeting female candidates, women candidates, that is a first sign of intersectionality of abuse, of violence, of discrimination against women. Another distribution which points to the intersectionality of online violence even more is this in Turkish? Sorry. Okay, I forgot to translate this. No matter, I will talk about it. Yeah, when we look at when we compare it with male candidates, we see more clearly that online violence is more intersectional in case of female candidates, because in both local and general elections, if you remember, in general elections we had more offensive and hate speech that was targeting male candidates actually. So if you look at here when we look at hate speech and offensive speech, male candidates received more hate speech and offensive language in general elections. Despite this, when we look at hate speech by gender and hate types, we see female candidates receiving more gender-based, obviously, and ethnicity-based hate speech than male candidates. So this indicates that the highly intersectional nature of hate speech. This is even clearer in the context of local elections. An overwhelming percentage of hate speech received by female candidates was ethnicity-based, as opposed to males, where a lesser percentage of the hate speech they received was ethnicity-based. Further, when we look at the distributions of hate speech by gender and party distributed among different political parties, we see DEM Party, YSP, the political party of the Kurdish National Movement, receiving consistently more hate speech in both elections. So since this political party has the largest number of ethnically Kurdish candidates, this also points to the dominance of ethnicity-based hate speech in the Turkish context. I could replicate these graphs in the American context with taking race instead of ethnicity. By the way, they're very parallel, even though the differences are not exactly the same. We see like female candidates from DEM Party and ESP receiving more hate, both from female candidates of different political parties, but also male candidates from their own political party. So women candidates are targeted more with ethnicity-based hate speech, as well as obviously gender-based hate speech. So they don't only receive more hateful and offensive content, at least in the context of local elections, but overall they receive a higher part of the hate speech compared to their male counterparts. This is again, what's the difference between these? Local, hate speech, general. This is hate speech. Local. This is offensive. This is supposed to be offensive. Never mind. Sorry for that. This should be offensive speech. We see when we look at the offensive speech, we see the trends to differ slightly. So offensive speech includes categories of hate speech, but goes beyond that. So we have male candidates in the general elections receiving more offensive speech than female candidates for all political parties. But again, the Kurdish political party receiving more offensive language on the whole. And this time, like the difference between these two trends can also be accounted by the fact that when offensive language targets an identity, they tend to target women more than men, female candidates more than male candidates. So the intersectionality aspect of this, both offensive speech and hate speech were the most striking factors that came up in both country contexts and like every election context. So we will have analyze this issue in a deeper way in the future publications that we are currently working on. And we can go into more details about the method about maybe some other results. If you have in the discussion section, if you have any questions. So this is the end of my presentation, and thank you for listening patiently.
Thank you so much for this really inspirational presentation. I'm sure, well, all of our online attendees, as well as those who are watching the recording later, will be learning a lot from it. With that, I can open the floor for questions. Our participants can just put their questions in the chat box or the Q&A box. I can read them out loud. I think they wouldn't be able to unmute themselves because this is a webinar. But as they warm up maybe to type their questions, let me start by asking, when you started the project, did you notice any particular gaps in the literature? I mean, because it looks like, I mean, it's obviously a very timely question, but in the context of Turkey at least, did you see any similar studies, maybe with different perspectives or different methodology?
There are studies on hate speech and offensive speech. We that concentrate on developing machine learning NLP methods to automatically detect hate speech and offensive speech. Sometimes they use different terminologies. They use abusive language, sometimes offensive language, but we haven't found many studies that use the specific definition of hate speech. And the other studies that we encountered were broader, like general context studies. We actually used a model developed by, we tested whether we could use a model developed by Bilkent University in collaboration with Aselsan, which had the categories of abusive language, different forms of abusive language. We took their model and tested it on our data, and found that the definitions it applied were the definitions it used itself were not really consistently applied. So we found it lacking in terms of performance, and also its definitions, its ontology was slightly different from the one we wanted to apply. The abusive language. The category of abusive language or offensive language doesn't necessarily distinguish or separate the identity aspect, which was very important for us. And so that's why we had to rely on our own definition and our own models in the end. And also the second, not necessarily shortcoming, but I mean, the second gap in the literature in this respect is the context specificity. So we think as a research group, every every kind of language has specific aspects depending on the domain. So when you have elections, political elections, a political context, the language used generally will have slightly different aspects. And we, especially for the Turkish context, we haven't found studies that specifically focus on political context as the context of hate speech and offensive speech. And at the time we surveyed the literature when we first started, at least I don't think we've encountered the studies that looked specifically at the gender based
Mhm.
differences in terms of hate speech and offensive language. So as far as I know, our study was at least among the very first to take up this issue using computational social scientific methods.
Hmm. That is certainly a major contribution because, I mean, based on my at least experience, I also haven't really come across any studies particularly focusing on the gender differences
Mhm.
when the hate speech is actually targeting women. In this particular instance, that certainly is a very welcome contribution to multiple literatures, actually, both methodologically speaking. Um, Another question I had in mind is how you deal with bots in
Mhm.
your sample.
Mhm. Yeah, there are different methodologies that are widely applied in the like automatic methods
Mhm.
uh, in the NLP literature that focus on big data, social media data research. For us specifically, we use an M3 inference model, which classifies accounts, user information into demographic categories, whether it's a person or an organization, and if it is detected to be a person, its gender, age group, etc. So its specific purpose is not necessarily detecting bots, but
Mhm.
it functions very well in terms of identifying bots that might be um, more difficult to identify with specifically bot-centered methods.
Mhm.
So we concentrated on personal accounts as opposed to organizational accounts. And also there are, of course, protocols to apply based on post counts per time
Mhm.
and other general bot characteristics to detect automatically that those the accounts are highly suspicious. And I mean, if an account posts like 1,000 tweets every day, it's most likely that, as an example, that's most likely a bot, and it is very easy to detect automatically. And also, we have when you have accounts that follow only one single account and
Mhm.
spam followers, like there's a wide discrepancy between followers and followees. In that sense, that's also a giveaway. When we established our Turkish user data set, we came up with a method to identify the user base in Turkey as like in a snowball method, which started from a very core number of accounts that were following a multiple number of like most famous accounts in Turkey from a variety of fields. So bot
Mhm.
accounts are usually concentrated on the field that within which they're spamming. So if you're a person, you're more likely to follow accounts from a variety of fields rather than a single field, etc. So we have different ways of automatically detect, and we also periodically clean the data. We clean suspended accounts and data associated with them. We clean accounts that are based in that use VPN and they don't post in Turkish, etc. So there are
Mhm.
many procedures that we uh, consistently apply to detect and eliminate both bots and other types of irrelevant accounts.
I see. Thank you so much. Well, I am checking my chat box. I do not see any questions, probably because the presentation was really clear. Um, with that,
All
before
good.
closing, would you like
Mhm.
to add anything or like final words before we
Yeah, I can share the links of our research. Sorry for not preparing this earlier. Sorry.
Hocam, what we could do is, because we are going to post this on our YouTube channel, we can just add that to the
Okay.
description.
Yeah.
So those of, well, mostly, I mean, most of the seminars are watched after the recording, and so
Uh-huh.
it would be great to have that information in the description.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, okay. That's a better idea because it will take some time for me to gather
Okay,
those
don't
resources.
worry.
But yeah, but the I would like to maybe stress a sometimes um, prevalent misconception about gender-based violence, gender-based online violence against women in general. Our study have found that, as you can see, we have higher distributions of like ethnicity-based hate speech directed
Mhm,
against women as well. So this and other forms of offense that are not based on gender or ethnicity or whatever, sometimes they target women more frequently. So this leads us to the conclusion that gender-based online violence against women doesn't have to be sexist language only. So
mhm,
we need to consider a variety of types and aspects of online violence. So if you have online violence that prefers to target women more than men, that's also sexual violence. That's also an online violence against women. It doesn't have to be sexist. I mean, sexist language is kind of covered with our category of gender-based hate speech. And as I already showed you, gender-based hate speech is not very common, is not very prevalent. I mean, this is a good thing, obviously, but this doesn't mean that online violence against women is lower than it actually is. That's something that needs to be stressed. This is like the most important aspect of the I think intersectionality argument in terms of online violence. I encourage anyone who is curious about gender-based violence and who are new to the subject or who would like to deepen their subject understanding of the subject. I would refer them to go to deepen their understanding on intersectionality. That was the most
yeah.
significant finding that we've had.
Thank you so much again. With that, I guess we will say this is the end of the seminar series for the fall semester. So we're closing with this excellent presentation on a really important topic. And we will reconvene hopefully in February with the spring 2025 semester CSS seminar series. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.